Surprise!
We're taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us for an incredible higher education marketing and enrollment management conference February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
amazing.
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas coming back to you again on another awesome episode on EdUp. Before we get into our co-hosts and our guests, I want to say thank you all to the thousands, yes, thousands of you who have purchased the book Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education. That was written by the one and only Kate Colbert and Dr. Joseph Sulustio, and with modest contributions by myself. You can go to edupexperience.com and learn about the book, learn about all the other episodes that we've done. I think this may be over 700 by the time you hear this. This comes out in a couple of weeks. So it's been an amazing ride. And again, if you want to follow us, go to edupexperience.com. Okay, great. Now, I want to get into introducing my guest co-host for today. He's been a guest. He's been a co-host a few times. He has the EdUp mug, co-host mug. So he's very proud of that. So he is Jordy Hyland. He's the president and CEO of American College of Education. Jordy, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Elvin, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for coming back. Always appreciate you coming back. And let's bring in our guests. I'm going to try my best. I know I'm going to get this wrong. As if you've heard me before, you know I'm really bad with names. So I'm going to try my best. All right. His name is Chris Keaveney. Did I get it right, Chris?
Keaveney.
See, I told you. I get it wrong all the time. Chris Keaveney.
I've heard it all, Elvin.
He's the founder and CEO of Meritize. Did I get that one right? Meritize?
That you got that right. Yep.
Nice. Okay. All right, Chris. Oh, I forgot that out of the way. Thank God. All right. So I'm very excited, and I'm sure our listeners are, and Jordy as well. We want to know, what is Meritize all about? So basically, what do you do and how do you do it, Chris?
Yep. Yeah. So what we do is we provide access to skills-based education for folks who are looking for, their alternative pathways to great jobs. We've been at this for about 7 years now. We saw an opportunity and a need for folks who wanted to go and get the skills to take jobs that range everything from like a certified nursing assistant to a lineman to a commercial airline pilot. All of this stuff exists outside of the traditional four-year school space. And there were real struggles with people who wanted to go that route in how they could pay for it. So we've stepped in to try to help those folks. And the real unique thing about what we do is we look at someone's merit, hence the name, but we're looking at, previous educational backgrounds, military backgrounds, and in some cases work history to try to help qualify people for funding they need to go get these great skills that lead directly to great jobs.
All right, so that's a nice overview, but I want to dive a little deeper. Actually, how do you do that? How do you get the students, and who are you partnering up with, and what's the end result when the student actually is able to get funding? I mean, how does it all work?
Yep. Yeah. So, our approach has been that we, I think I haven't had anyone tell me that this doesn't make sense, but it is very different than how traditional educational financing is done. So we actually start by looking at the labor market and looking for places where the demand for certain skills is outpacing the supply. And when we find areas that we like, we then go find schools that give people the skills to take those jobs. And we're pretty selective about the schools we're willing to work with. We have to be convinced they're doing the right things for their students. And again, this is all outside the traditional four-year college space. So, it ranges from some mom and pop training programs to some very large non-traditional training programs. And we bring those schools onto our platform as official partners. And then as they bring students into their school, we then, have a product that can help them, pay for it if they need that help. And so you can think of it as like underwriting in 3 stages. We underwrite the labor market, we underwrite the schools, and then we underwrite the students. And the result of it has been, we're showing that you can not only help people who would not have access to this type of education otherwise, but we're seeing really good performance in terms of people able to get through the programs, get into great jobs, and ultimately repay the loans that they've gotten.
Got it. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense for me. I appreciate that. I'm sure Jordy has some questions. Jordy, you're up.
All right, thank you, Evan. So, Chris, I saw on your website some data around 30 million U.S. jobs that pay more than $55,000 that don't require a bachelor's, 12 million openings, and huge gaps, especially in manufacturing. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the gaps, which sectors they're in, which geographies you're seeing the biggest opportunities? And also, I'd be interested if you feel like the problem is getting better or worse.
Yeah, that's a great series of questions there. So I'll try my best to address them. We are seeing issues that are very broad based. Certainly within a specific type of job, there are geographical differences. For example, pipe welders, there's demand along the Gulf Coast, like it's an energy sector type stuff, probably not as much demand in the Southwest, right? And we study all of that stuff, and we're making sure that we factor that into our approach and our strategies. In terms of where we're seeing this, it is across what we define as the entire skills-based space. So, allied health, technology, aviation, and it's not just pilots. It's aviation maintenance workers and the folks who work on tarmacs, and it kind of runs the gamut. And industrials, right? So, which would be manufacturing. It includes like our electrical and power infrastructure, and then some nascent, key areas like wind turbine maintenance and solar power installation and maintenance, and the infrastructure around electrical vehicles, right? So, putting charging stations in across the country, all of those types of things. And so we see this massive need, and there are, to your point, Jordy, millions of unfilled positions because there's a mismatch between the available labor and the skills that are required for these jobs.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, clearly you're addressing access, which is a real challenge for filling the skills gaps through programs like this, and then getting individuals into jobs. Another element to access can be access to the training, and there's lots of different approaches to how to train people for skills. And I'd be interested just hearing more about your partners and whether it's often in person or blended, or if there's even online options for some of your skill-based partner programs.
Yeah, so it's a pretty wide range, and as you can imagine, just based on what I described, you have allied health and aviation, which it's very, very difficult to do anything other than to be there and in the lab setting or the in the planes, etc. And then there are other areas like technology where there's a lot more ability to do things in a hybrid fashion. So when we look at our school partners, and we have about 1,100 of them now across the country, it's a pretty wide range of stuff. The common denominator for all of them is that we are, you know, verifying on a continuous basis that they are doing the right thing for their students. They're giving them skills that let them go find jobs within that field, and that the cost associated with attending these programs compared to the incomes that the students go and receive in the jobs they take makes the decision to go get that training a positive ROI one. And that is the common theme across all of these schools. Outside of that, you know, if they are, you know, hybrid or have some unique instructional models, we're pretty open to what that looks like as long as the results are there.
Nice. That's great. Evan,
Yeah.
do you want me to keep going or pass it back to you?
No, I think you're going on a roll, Jordy. So
Okay.
feel free to keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, okay. So I'll go on to the next question then. So Chris, one of the challenges in traditional higher ed is approaches to credit for prior learning, where schools provide credit for previous courses that overlap in programs or even work experience to help bring down the costs. And it seems like your Meritize score is a similar concept, in the sense where you're looking at a student holistically and providing providing a reward for students for their past achievement. So just wondering, like, have you seen other models like this out there in terms of the credit score? Are you the only ones? And love to hear just more about it and how you came up with the interesting concept.
Yeah, happy to. I love talking about this dimension of what we do. So, you know, to make a very long story digestible for this podcast, you know, I spent a lot of time in consumer credit at large financial institutions doing statistical modeling and building predictive scores and all sorts of stuff a long time ago. But in 2008, I was the credit officer for, you know, a large financial institution student lending business. I had kind of just serendipitously found myself in that role. And there were people even back then, 15 years ago, talking about, you know, that educational finance, the way it was approached in the private loans that were made, was that the loans were essentially being made to prime and super prime co-borrowers. All right. And honestly, in big parts of the market, that's still the way it's done today. You can go and look at, there are publicly traded companies where you can see this type of information, that 95% of the loans they're making are co-signed. And you look at the credit profiles, and it's obvious that those loans are being made to the co-borrower. And so there were people back then in 2008 talking about, you know, ways that you could do this. And for the first time, I had access to very specific data that showed the issue of access, right? So there are lots of people who don't have someone willing to co-sign on a loan who has the credit profile that's needed. And so there were lots of discussions and people talking about, you know, how you could think about this. And so, you know, what we're doing, I don't claim is original thought. You know, there were lots of people tossing these ideas around. The only thing I do take claim for is that I was dumb enough to work on it, because it's not an easy thing to solve. And honestly, I don't think we've completely solved it. I think we've put a big dent in a lot of the things that were wrong. So anyway, even back then in 2008, I hired a company to do a little bit of a science project for me. They went and they found it was roughly, you know, 9 or 10 schools that were willing to contribute student academic records and work with this third party to append credit bureau information to it. And so what we ended up with was a data set of several 100,000 student academic records linked to up to 10 years of credit bureau information. And they examined for me the correlations between academic success and academic progression and good outcomes like completion of school and repayment of loans. And then you could proxy employment and income off of the credit bureau data. And they came back with results that, you know, made a lot of sense, that there were very strong positive correlations between, you know, what someone had done up to to that point in their education and completion of school, repayment of loans, employment and income, et cetera. And so, I had planned to use that to kind of fund a larger initiative around how to do this. But by the time I got the data, the financial crisis had started. And so I spent the next 4 years just kind of fighting fires and getting the portfolio through the crisis. But this has always kind of been percolating in my mind. And again, long story short, in 2015 or so, I kind of came back to this and said, I want to work on this. And so we started building out very detailed analytical models and some technology that would allow you to use someone's previous education record in a credit decision. And 2017, we launched Meritize, and we've been doing that all along. To your question, Jordy, about like, are other people doing it? There are other people who say they use non-traditional data. They use it in different ways. I'm not aware of anyone who's using it like as a key pillar of what they do, like we do. The other thing I would say is, using non-traditional data can be scary because you have all sorts of fair lending laws and requirements, and you need to make sure that you're not violating any of that stuff. And using data that doesn't come directly from the credit bureaus can create some complications in that realm. But we have the experience and so forth to know how to do it, and we've actually gone through testing to make sure that what we're doing is compliant with all of the laws and regs. So I hope I hit on.
Yeah, no, that was
the pieces
really interesting. Thank you.
Attention.
Are you ready to elevate your institution's marketing and enrollment strategies? Join the EdUp Experience podcast at the Insights EDU conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't miss out on this opportunity to hear from engaging speakers from industry-leading companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and higher ed leaders. Learn the latest marketing and enrollment strategies to grow your programs. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration.
Attention. Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon.
Another perception of challenges, or of an important challenge within traditional higher ed, is alignment between higher ed and business needs.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about that often. I was reading one of your colleagues' blog posts, and I think you were mentioned in it, so I assume you're probably pretty familiar about it. It was about aligning learning to business goals, and working with companies and getting a seat at the table, identifying the business goals, creating learning programs that upskill, that help employees achieve goals, and then proving it with metrics. Yep. And so seems like that's an important piece that Meritize is playing in terms of bringing the pieces together with the partners, with the business, and then almost providing a service and sort of aligning the learning to the business goals. But just wondering if you can tell us more about that and any challenges and opportunities you've seen with fostering those close strategic business relationships.
Yeah. So I think in some respects, we have, what we do makes it easier. And then there are a couple of dimensions where it actually may make it tougher. And so to peel back the layer of the onion there, I think what you just said is an incredibly important piece of how we should view, in my opinion, how we should view higher education. And so one of the reasons we kind of focused on what we call the skills-based space, right, outside of traditional four-year education, is that it's just more I'll use the term linear. I don't think it's a perfect term, but more linear to translate the skills the students are getting in the training to what the employer needs, or the skill sets the employers need. Like, as an example, if you're going to get trained as a MRI technician, it's pretty clear like what job you're going to go take on the back end of it. And it's very rare for an employer to think they need an MRI technician and they get confused about like what that skill set is. Where it's a little bit more difficult, I think, in the space that we play in is that there are it's relatively fragmented, and geography plays a larger role in this than it probably does in traditional higher ed. And so, someone who is trained as an MRI technician most likely is not going to move halfway across the country for that type of role. They're looking for something locally. And so, that's something that you need to be very careful about, in that, you're not helping someone go get trained for a job that doesn't exist in their area, or in an area that they're willing to be in. So, I think to a large degree, it's more complex when you get into like, 4-year degree programs where a lot of what you're doing doesn't map directly into, a precise job. But we like to try to keep things simple, and so for us, it hasn't been too much of an issue.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. One of the other challenges and opportunities in higher ed is around counseling and mentoring. And I'm a big believer in mentorship. And I saw your Meritize sponsorship program, where there's one-on-one coaching, and there's what you call tipping point skills, and it seems to facilitate underrepresented groups into management. Can you tell us a bit more about the program? It sounds really impactful.
Yeah. So our this is the brainchild of our Benton McTaggart, who is our head of human capital. He developed this program. We're now running it for the second time. And it is, I think he provided a pretty good description of it. We as a company have as one of our core pillars, the desire and the willingness to help our own people, expand their skill sets, and specifically make sure that we're giving support to underrepresented groups, right? And so the sponsorship program, and there's a specific reason we call it sponsorship rather than kind of some of the other generic names that are used for these things. The folks who are on our executive management team all participate, and they get paired up with someone who's enrolled in the program, and their job is to truly act as a sponsor, to kind of help advocate for this person within the organization, as well as provide help and advice. And so we did it a couple years ago to a great amount of success, in my estimation. I think we had 6 participants, and all 6 of them were promoted within 6 or 12 months of completion of the program.
Nice.
And now we have another one going with another 6 participants, and we're seeing really strong performance out of them, and we expect it to have similar results.
That's great. Thank you. Sounds like a great program. Alvin, I will pass it back to you.
All right, cool. Great set of questions, Jordy. Thanks so much. So I'm looking at your website, Chris, and you have a lot going on. So I see you got the information for students, for schools. Students can make a payment. You have information for employers, find training. So I'm assuming that's for prospective students or students. So explore careers. So I'm trying to figure out, there's a lot going on there. You have a lot of different constituents. So what is the main focus here? I mean, who are you? Who are you trying to attract? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question, and so what we do at the end of the day is it's not simple. Like it gets relatively on the surface, I suppose it's pretty simple. Like we provide access to folks to get skills-based educations, but in practice, it's a little more complex than that because we do have multiple constituents, as you mentioned, Elvin. Um, uh, our model historically has been, it's a lot like indirect auto lending, right? So, you go to buy a car, you walk into a dealership, folks will finance that car and they're working with the dealership on the financing of that car. You really don't even, in some cases, know who they're talking to on the back end about the financing until you get into the details of it.
Yeah.
And that's how it works for us, to a large extent as well. The schools are recruiting the students. The students are working with the financial aid office at those schools to get whatever funding they need in place. And then we have the relationship with the school, and so they're acting a little bit as like the dealership there. And so we do have very clear constituencies in terms of the students and in terms of the schools. The part that I get pretty excited about, and I think is the future of what we do, is the employer side of things, right? And so, we have some resources there to help employers understand what we do and how we do it, and how we might be able to help them, find folks with the skills they need. And ultimately, my goal or vision for Meritize is to help employers change from being talent consumers to talent creators, right? And I think
I
employers,
like that. Hold on, Chris. That was awesome. Can you say that one more time? That was pretty cool. Say it again.
yeah,
Talent.
talent change, like employers changing their focus from being talent consumers to talent creators.
Got it. Yeah. Expand. It's great.
Yeah, and so today, I think this, especially in a lot of the places we play in, um, employers are looking for people who have skills that they need, and they're still doing it the same way that they did it, 10, 20 years ago. Whether it's Indeed or monster.com or other job boards.
Yep.
And what they end up doing is they're fishing in the pond of people who already have skills that they require, right? And that's relatively speaking, inefficient and costly. And so when I talk to employers, and I've talked to a bunch of employers, and the reaction and the feedback is generally the same. I say to them, well, what if you took all of that money you're using to recruit folks who already have the skills, and you invest it in helping people get the skills that you need? And and at the core of it, we're a finance company, so we have some models where we can actually de-risk this for employers. And so I talk to employers, like take someone who needs diesel mechanics, right? And instead of you just going and trying to find diesel mechanics who work at a dealership down the street and offering them more money, what if you took that and invested it in helping to contribute to the training associated with new diesel mechanics? And we help you like develop a sustainable pipeline of talent that could come into your organization. And there's interest in it, but it's a very different way than what they're used to doing it. So it takes a lot of time and energy to build the inertia there.
Yeah. Have you spoken to folks on the higher education side and what their thoughts on about that model?
Yeah, I think we in certain circles we do. To be very honest, it hasn't been like a huge focus of ours, but I think there are a lot of really great folks in the traditional higher ed space who are thinking about things, generally the same way, right? Like, how do you create direct pathways from education to employment, and how do you involve the employers? And I've seen this, that I think there is a renewed focus on making sure that we're giving students, in no matter what sector of the the higher ed space, you're talking about like making sure you're giving the students the skills that employers need, rather than making assumptions about what employers are looking for.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I love that, and I think you're hitting it right on the head there. The idea of, I think of it as almost on the front end, right? It's like you're investing in recruiting folks and their training on the front end before they
Mhm.
go through the process of training, and then it's a big pool and then a huge pond, and they're fishing there. So I like that a
Yep.
lot. Um, Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, well, I appreciate that, and it'll take a lot of work and a lot of sweat equity to try to get
Yeah.
like I said, the momentum going. But I think at the end of the day, it could be transformational for everyone involved.
No, I agree. I do want to pivot real quick because I have to ask, especially with what's going on with AI, artificial intelligence. What are you guys doing with it? How are you using it? Your partners, are you guys talking about that?
Mhm.
Talk us through all that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of dimensions. I mean, in terms of like our school partners, there are some schools in the technology space that are starting to introduce AI training programs, which is interesting. But I don't think that's the focus of the question. We are interested in how AI could transform the way people are trained. And I don't think that's like really taken hold yet in at least the places that we play in, but it's something we're watching. It could change the way schools operate to some degree, right? And how students get the information they need. And then I think the third piece of it is that over the course of some period of time, I don't know exactly how to define that period of time. I think it's a skill set that to varying degrees people are going to have to be familiar with, right? It may not be everyone needs to know the specific details of AI, but I think there will be a considerable number of jobs that to some degree or another use AI or rely on AI to create efficiencies. And so Elvin, I think the the best answer I can give right now is a lot of it is TBD, right? I think it's going to have a pretty big
Good call.
impact. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet or what the timeline will be.
Yeah.
Maybe we
No.
should ask GPS chatter or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Jordy, any other questions you got?
I think we covered mine.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So, Chris, this has been very interesting. I do have one more question before I ask you the final two. You keep saying that you're collecting data, right? That's not part of the FICO score. Can you walk us through what type of data are we talking about here? I'm trying to figure out. I've been trying to think, what is it that they're collecting there? That would show like a score that this person is good to take out a loan, certain interest rate, and they're more likely to pay it back, things like that. What are you looking for?
Yeah. So, we the simple answer is that with the applicant's permission, they obviously grant the permission. We let them provide us with a previous academic transcript, and it could be we can handle everything that ranges from a high school transcript to a previous college enrollment, and even graduate record examination transcripts. So folks who've got the high school equivalency. Separately, we allow veterans to provide us with their what is the equivalent of a transcript for the military. It's a DD 214, and we can look at that as well. We have technology that can pull the relevant information that we need off of these things. And look, at the end of the day, what we're really doing is we are examining whether these folks have shown the grit that indicates that they're likely to be successful at getting the training that they want to get. And this may be a little bit of a detour from your question, but I think it's pretty cool and it's important. Is that if you look at the the most recent IPEDS data for the schools that participate in the Title IV program, the graduation rate within 150% of the expected program length. So for a traditional 4-year school, its 6-year graduation rate was about 62%, meaning less than 2 out of 3 students complete within 6 years.
Yeah.
The schools that we partner with on our platform, their expected student completion rate is about 80%. That's a little bit north of 80%. The Meritize customers who attend these schools are completing at about a 90% rate.
Wow.
And so, we're partnering with schools that are doing the right things for students. They're getting them through their programs. They're getting them the skills that lead to good jobs. And then the way that we evaluate students is actually allowing us to find folks who have demonstrated that they have, the grit and the determination to do what they say they're going to do.
Wow, yeah, I'm glad you deviated. That's a great stat that you said, and it's very impressive. Wow, well done. That's great. Congrats to you and the team. That's wonderful.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, great. So we're going into our last 2 questions. Appreciate your time, Chris. So we always like to ask everyone, did we miss anything from this conversation? Jordy asked some amazing questions. That's why he's here. Did he miss anything? Did I miss anything that you wanted us to ask or that you want to talk about? Anything coming up, things like that. And then the last question is, what do you see as the future of higher education?
Yeah, I guess, to the first point, the one thing that I know is probably being talked to death, but I think is an important topic, as you think about higher ed right now, is the student loan forgiveness. And the Supreme Court ruling from last month, and so forth. And, a lot of times folks will ask me, what my perspective is on that. And if you don't mind, I'll share it quickly here, which is, I was less focused on whether the forgiveness as it was laid out was actually going to happen, and more focused on, kind of what the rationale was and what the next steps would be, because the underlying issue is really around some of the things we've talked about here over the last 40 minutes or so, which is, if folks are not getting skills that lead directly to good jobs, like any debt you take out is bad debt, honestly, right? And so you could forgive all of this debt, but then it's not going to solve the problem going forward, right? And so this kind of bleeds into the second part of your question. What do I think the future of higher ed looks like? I hope that what it looks like is that there is much more of a focus on giving folks skills that lead directly to the jobs and to the employment prospects that they're looking for, and it's done in a way that makes it a positive ROI decision, right? So the return on investment is there. I could go on and on about this, and I promise I won't. But I think there's just a lot of inertia towards people thinking that a 4-year degree is the answer to things, and for a lot of folks it is, and in a lot of ways it is.
Yeah.
But there are other things at play here, and for a large number of folks, that probably isn't the optimal route, and there are other ways to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That makes sense. Jordy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, completely agree. And I think another thing that jumps out in that debate around and that whole process around the debt cancellation is, why is tuition so high that's leading to these debt levels as well? And I think that is something that doesn't get talked about enough. Like, what are the drivers, and are some of those drivers leading to those high levels of debt surmountable? Can we make progress on them?
Yeah, no, no,
So,
I agree. Those are good questions that everybody in higher education should be asking and thinking about. This has been a great conversation. So thank you both so very much. I want to outro my guest co-host, Mr. Jordy Highland, President and CEO at American College of Education. Jordy, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks for having me. Great discussion, and I learned a lot. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And our guest, your guest today, and I'm going to kill his last name again, but I'm going to try my best. Chris Keaveney.
yeah, you got it.
Oh, yes. Founder
You
and
got it.
CEO at Meritize. It's Meritize. You'll find the website in the show notes. So please go to the show notes, click on the link and learn more. Chris, and you and the team are doing great work. Thank you for the time. How was your EdUp experience today, Chris?
You know, I very much appreciate it. I had a great time. I love talking about this stuff, and so I can't thank you enough for having me on and letting me babble for a while.
Thank you, Chris. Well, you didn't babble at all. We got some really good nuggets from you, so I appreciate that. And I'm sure our listeners did too. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Oh, yeah.
Attention higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. We are taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us at Insights EDU on February 20th to 22nd, 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. Gain insight into the latest higher education trends and cutting-edge marketing strategies that'll take your institution's enrollment to a whole new level. This is your opportunity to connect with higher education leaders and marketing experts from across the country. Comprehensive presentations, engaging panel discussions, and more. Insights EDU will equip you to position your institution for growth. Register now at insightsedu.com and use the code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Can you afford to miss this conference?
I don't think so. Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touch point for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.